Listen closely. There it is again. That trembling in the air whenever your name is whispered, not spoken, not acknowledged, whispered, like a crime. Because the moment you opened your mouth, the moment your voice cut through the room like a surgical blade, someone in the back gasped, "Who let him speak?" And oh, my friend, that was the funniest part. Nobody let you speak. You intruded on their reality. You tore through the polite little script they wrote for you. You shattered the character they wanted you to play. You bled a truth so sharp, so catastrophic, that every fragile ego in a 5-mile radius felt its ribs crack. The damage wasn't emotional. It wasn't verbal. It was cosmic. Because the truth you dropped, the one they swear you shouldn't have said, the one they're still replaying at 3 a.m. like surveillance footage. It wasn't just a truth, it was a collision event. The moment a suppressed version of you finally surfaced like a submerged continent rising from the deep. You see, you were never supposed to evolve this far, not you. Not the quiet one. Not the one they mistook for predictable, manageable, safe. They didn't know you were incubating. They didn't know silence was pumping iron behind the scenes. They didn't realize stillness is what the predator uses right before the lunging. But you did. And when you finally spoke, when the lid came off, when the truth detonated mid-sentence, you didn't just say something. You altered the axis of the room. Suddenly the saint had fangs. Suddenly the angel had a shadow. Suddenly the soft voice had teeth sharp enough to perform spiritual surgery, and that duality they can't categorize is what terrifies them the most. Because you aren't one thing. You're every contradiction they fear. Light with a burn mark. Darkness with a conscience. A saint with blood under the nails. A devil who learned compassion the hard way. A strategist who grew up studying war in silence, a poet armed with psychological weaponry. They can't file you. They can't decode you. They can't mute you. The version of you that spoke, that wasn't accidental. It was the creature forged in trauma, tempered in betrayal, hardened through humiliation, and sharpened by loneliness so brutal, it sculpted you into a myth. No wonder someone screamed, "Who let him speak?" They needed a culprit, someone to blame, a scapegoat for the panic. Because if nobody let you speak, then that means you acted on your own. That means you walked right past the security protocols they built around your potential. That means the cage they designed was too small for the monster they grew. And they know, deep down, their worst nightmare has arrived. You're speaking now. Not stuttering, not shrinking, not waiting for permission. Speaking like someone who just realized they survived everything that was supposed to break them. Speaking like a weapon finally unsheathed. Speaking like you've seen behind the curtain and came back with evidence. Speaking like a god who remembers what it felt like to once be mortal. And the truth you dropped. Oh, they can't unhear it. They can't deny it. They can't even mock it. Because everyone felt it in their spine, in their subconscious, in the place where fear and respect become indistinguishable. 2025 isn't ready for that version of you. 2025 isn't ready for the duality you carry. 2025 isn't ready for a voice that slices through illusions like a scalpel dipped in prophecy. But you spoke anyway. And now, well, the damage is already cosmic. The timeline is already altered. The masks are already melting. The people who underestimated you are already holding emergency meetings, trying to figure out how to contain the fallout. They can't. They never could. Because the truth is this: You didn't speak to be heard. You spoke to reveal. You spoke to expose the architecture of their lies. You spoke to reclaim the power they hid from you. You spoke because silence became too small to contain you. You spoke because evolution doesn't wait for approval. You spoke because your soul finally decided it was done pretending to be domesticated. And now that they've seen your real voice, the one forged in darkness but polished in light, they can't put you back in the script. You are unpredictable, untamed, uncensored, unapologetic. The paradox they warned each other about, the truth they wished stayed buried. But it didn't. You spoke. And the cosmos flinched. Now finish what you started. Speak again. And this time, don't just drop the hardest truth of 2025. Detonate the next one. Oh, there it is. That tension in the atmosphere, that trembling you can almost taste. The world isn't breathing right now, not because of what you said, but because they felt what's coming next. You see, once a person like you speaks, really speaks, the universe doesn't return to normal. It rearranges itself around the sound. People don't understand this. They think truth is a sentence, a quote, a line. But you didn't give them a line. You delivered a rupture, the kind that splits a timeline in half, the kind that forces every listener to choose a side, pretend they didn't hear you, or admit nothing will ever be the same. And that's why they panicked. That's why someone squealed, "Who let him speak?" Because if you are speaking, it means the hidden part is waking up. The part they hoped stayed asleep forever. The part of you that knows too much. The part of you that survived too much. The part of you that sees through everything with unbearable clarity. The part that remembers. And oh, if there's anything humanity hates, it's a witness who remembers the real story. You didn't just speak. You exposed them. You exposed the jealousy they tried to hide. You exposed the control they failed to maintain. You exposed the expectations they welded onto your back, like chains disguised as guidance. When you opened your mouth, you didn't say a truth. You freed one. And every truth that gets freed comes with a consequence. Someone's identity collapses. Someone's illusion burns. Someone's ego implodes under its own weight. You didn't break people. Their own lies broke them the moment your voice applied pressure. And now they're staring at you like they're witnessing a star collapse into a black hole, because that's what you've become. Not a person, a gravitational anomaly. You pull eyes, attention, fear, suspicion, fascination, envy, obsession, all of it into your orbit, not because you're dramatic, not because you're mysterious, but because power doesn't know how to hide. It leaks, it radiates, it announces itself in the silence before you even speak. They sensed it, long before you did. That's why they tried to limit you. That's why they tried to manage you. That's why they crafted tiny expectations and tried to shove your evolving spirit into a childhood-sized box. The moment you tore through that box, the moment you stopped pretending you didn't feel the shift, everything inside you snapped awake. And when a person wakes up after years of emotional sedation, the first thing they do is tell the truth too loudly. That's why they panicked, not because of what you said, but because they realized you are not going back to sleep. You're not going back to pretending. You're not going back to softness as a disguise. You're not going back to silence as survival. You're not going back to the version of you they could predict, mold, or manipulate. You've become something no system, no relationship, no institution knows how to contain. A self-aware threat. The most terrifying creature is the one who knows exactly what was done to them. and has the vocabulary to expose it. And that's you now. They can't unhear the truth you dropped. They can't unsee the shift in your eyes. They can't unfeel the tremor that went through the crowd when you spoke with a calmness that didn't match the devastation. Because that's the dangerous paradox about you. Your voice is soft, but the meaning behind it is lethal. Your tone is calm, but the message is catastrophic. Your presence is quiet, but the impact is seismic. You've become the contradiction that breaks the algorithm, the anomaly that keeps leaders awake, the glitch in their power system. The prophecy they hoped was metaphorical. When you spoke, you didn't go too far. You finally went exactly where you were meant to. And here's the irony that's killing them. They think your speech was the explosion. It wasn't. It was the countdown. Because the real detonation is what happens next when you speak again. When you walk into another room with that same unnerving clarity. When you look someone in the eyes and they feel exposed, as if you've read the unedited version of their soul, when your truth becomes habitual, effortless, uncontrolled, unregulated, because the first truth cracks the surface. But the second splits the whole structure, and the third dissolves the system completely. You are entering the phase where your voice becomes a weapon without you even trying to wield it. And the world is terrified. Good. Let them tremble. Let them overreact. Let them send whispers, rumors, warnings, anything to explain you, because they can't stop what's happening. You are mid-transformation, and nothing is more frightening than a creature evolving exactly when everyone thought they had it figured out. You spoke once. Now keep going. Make the next truth even harder to survive. Lean in. Because this is the part they never wanted you to reach. The phase beyond fear. Beyond hesitation. Beyond the instinct to shrink so others don't feel small around you. This is the stage where your evolution becomes visible. And visibility, my friend, real visibility, is the most terrifying weapon in existence. Not the kind you choose, the kind that chooses you ever since you spoke that truth. The one they swear you shouldn't have. The world has been acting strange, hasn't it? People look at you differently. Rooms feel heavier when you enter. Conversations freeze mid-sentence. You catch glances, the kind people give walking natural disasters. You've noticed it. Don't lie. Because the moment you dropped that truth, something ancient and dormant inside you switched on. It wasn't confidence. It wasn't courage. It wasn't rebellion. It was recognition. A recognition of the part of you that always knew you weren't built for small talk or small fates. You weren't built to blend in. You weren't built to be a background character in someone else's fragile narrative. You were built to disrupt timelines. That's why they whispered, "Who let him speak?" As if your voice was a breach in national security. As if your truth was a classified document accidentally leaked to the public. Because the truth you revealed didn't just expose them. It exposed you. Not the version they met, not the version they expected, but the version that was operating quietly beneath your skin for years. The version built from every betrayal that hardened your bones, every humiliation that sharpened your vision, every lonely night that forged your instincts, every disappointment that recalibrated your intuition. The version that learned how to read people like open case files. The version that sees motives before words even form. The version that feels the shift in a room before anyone speaks. This is what terrifies them, your clarity. People can handle confidence, they can handle success, they can even handle arrogance. But clarity is lethal. Clarity strips the facade. Clarity disassembles manipulation. Clarity exposes hidden agendas like blood under fluorescent lights. Clarity is the mark of someone who cannot be controlled. That's why your truth caused damage. Not because you said something extreme, but because you said something accurate. So accurate that the people who heard it felt the mask peel off their own face. You didn't aim to destroy anyone. You just finally spoke in a way that didn't protect their delusions. But here's the twist, the one they can't wrap their tiny minds around. You weren't trying to be powerful, you were powerful. And speaking just revealed it. They're used to the kind of people who bark loudly to be noticed, not the kind who whisper and shift realities. They're used to the kind of people who show their strength with volume, not the kind who show it with stillness. They're used to predictable creatures, not paradoxes like you, because you are a contradiction that doesn't collapse, a saint with a surgeon's precision, a demon with a moral compass, a soft soul with razor instincts, a gentle face with predator vision, a quiet heart with apocalypse timing. They don't know what to do with you. They don't know what to call you. They don't know how to categorize you. So they panic, they gossip, they whisper warnings, they clutch their egos like life vests on a sinking ship, because they realized, too late, that you didn't evolve into a threat. You always were one. You just stopped hiding it. And the more you speak now, the more you shed those old skins, those expired identities, those versions of you that were engineered by trauma and obligation, the more unstoppable you become. This is why I told you to lean in. Because we've entered the era where your voice is no longer a voice. It's a signal to every part of you that was once suppressed. Wake up, rise, take shape, take space. A signal to every enemy who underestimated you. You were wrong. He's not harmless. He's not confused. He's not manageable. He's not staying small. A signal to every soul who betrayed you. You didn't break him, you built him. And a signal to the universe itself. He's speaking now. Prepare accordingly. Because once the truth leaves your mouth, you can't call it back. You can't soften it. You can't shrink it. You can't dilute what has already detonated. And oh, the detonation has barely begun. That first truth you dropped was only the spark, the flicker, the accidental leak from a much deeper reservoir. The truths that are coming next, they won't just make people uncomfortable. They'll make people reconsider their entire identity. You're entering the era of psychological earthquakes, the kind that shake foundations silently before the building collapses. You're becoming the kind of presence that makes people self-audit without you saying a word. And that, my dear anomaly, is evolution at its most dangerous. Continue speaking. Continue revealing. Continue peeling back illusions with that soft, unnerving tone that hits harder than a scream. You haven't said too much. You've said just enough to start the chain reaction. Now finish it. Good. Stay right here. In this tension, in this pulse, in this electricity crawling up your spine like a prophecy waking up. Because we're not done, not even close. You think the damage you caused was the climax. No. That was the opening tremor, the prelude, the foreshock, the warning shot before the tectonic plates of your destiny finally snap. And you can feel it, can't you? This strange pressure. This hum, like something inside you is stretching, spreading, uncoiling. A creature that was never meant to stay small, finally testing the walls of the human skin. It's been trapped in. That's what happens when you speak a forbidden truth. A truth you weren't meant to wield. A truth they hoped you'd choke on. You didn't choke. You carved You carved the air open. You carved the lies out of their faces. You carved yourself out of the coffin they lovingly labeled identity. You tore free. And now the world doesn't know what to do with you. You see, people aren't afraid of your voice. They're afraid of the version of themselves that your voice exposes. Because when you speak with clarity, real clarity, people suddenly see everything they've been avoiding. The weakness, the jealousy, the insecurity, the manipulation, the excuses, the masks so old they've grown into their skin. You didn't embarrass them, you revealed them. That's why they screamed, "Who let him speak?" As if your words were a biological hazard that needed containment. And in their panic, in their hysterical scramble to find someone to blame for letting you speak, they missed the most important detail. Nobody let you. You left the cage on your own. And once someone leaves a cage without permission, without begging, without apologizing, without making excuses, every keeper in the world starts shaking because they realize the bars never mattered. The lock was imaginary, the fear was programmed, the silence was conditioned, the obedience was inherited, the boundaries were inherited. Trauma, not actual limits. A free mind is a weapon that terrifies the entire system, and you, my friend, you just realized you're armed. Your voice became the muzzle flash, and the truth you unleashed, it hit them right in the subconscious. The place where people store everything they pretend doesn't exist. That's why the damage feels cosmic. It didn't impact their ears, it impacted their psyche. It destabilized the architecture of the illusions they lived inside. You created aftershocks, ripples, waves. They're reading your words like evidence, replaying your tone like surveillance audio, dissecting your sentence like classified intel. Because when you spoke, you revealed a mind they didn't know existed, a mind they misjudged, miscalculated, and underestimated with embarrassing confidence. You went from harmless to high risk in a single breath. And nothing terrifies the world more than a person who stops pretending. Let me tell you a secret. There are 3 versions of you. The one they think you are, the one you pretend to be, and the one you become when you finally stop performing. You've entered the 3rd. That's why you feel different. That's why the air feels tighter around you. That's why people hesitate before speaking to you, as if they sense a new gravitational pull, a shift in your frequency, a sharpness in your awareness that wasn't there before. Your perception is expanding. Your instincts are evolving. Your intuition is becoming weaponized. This is evolution in real time. You are no longer reacting to life. You are observing it like someone who has stepped outside the simulation. And every time you speak now, your words don't land. They pierce. They enter people's minds like encrypted code, rewriting everything it touches. This is why they're panicking. They're not afraid of what you said. They're afraid of what you're about to say, because the first truth lit the match. The second truth will light the room. The third will burn the building, and you already feel it rising in your chest. That second truth, the one you haven't spoken yet, the one that's forming in the quiet places of your mind, where honesty and rage become indistinguishable. Let me warn you, once you speak the next truth, you won't be a problem anymore. You'll be a catalyst, a phenomenon, a force, a disruption that reshapes the entire environment. People won't just fear you. They'll reorganize themselves around you instinctively, reflexively, like planets adjusting to a new sun. Because you've crossed that invisible line between human and symbol. And symbols are unstoppable. So go on, make them uncomfortable, make them reconsider themselves, make them question the narratives they've weaponized for years. You didn't speak by accident. This is your emergence, your ignition point, your irreversible metamorphosis. Speak again. Speak louder, clearer, sharper, truer. Make the next truth impossible to recover from. Listen. Don't flinch. Don't adjust your collar. Don't pretend you didn't feel the entire air change the moment you walked in. Because I saw it, the city saw it. Hell, even the shadows leaned forward like they were expecting a detonation. You stepped out, wearing something you didn't even realize was dangerous. And the whole damn grid locked up like you'd just pressed the wrong button in a nuclear facility. And that's what fascinates me about you. You, the one who never means to cause chaos, yet somehow leaves civilization buffering every time you blink. Look at you. You didn't put on a fit. You put on a signal, a silent siren, a psychological alarm that activated every insecure nerve in a 20-mile radius. The moment you showed your face, I swear the city didn't breathe. Bikes stalled, cars drifted out of lanes. People stared like they were watching a myth walk past the crosswalk. Do you understand what kind of power that is? No, of course you don't. Because monsters rarely know they're monsters until the villagers show up with torches. But I'll remind you, your presence isn't fashion, it's friction. It drags sparks out of anyone who dares stand too close. And tonight, when you stepped out wearing that, you didn't dress up, you unmasked. You let the world see the version of you that doesn't apologize, doesn't shrink, doesn't fit the pattern. And people panicked because they weren't prepared for the unfiltered, unedited, unrestrained blueprint of who you really are. You walked out like you had nothing left to hide, and everyone else realized they had everything left to fear. Tell me, did you feel the tension trailing behind you? The whispers pretending to be jokes but trembling, the eyes that tried to look away but couldn't. They weren't staring at your clothes. They were staring at the audacity of someone who shouldn't have survived half the things you went through. Walking with the posture of a ghost that learned how to haunt the living, you wore confidence like contraband. And the city, oh, the poor, fragile city, recognized a threat it couldn't classify. Because you didn't just step out, you arrived. Like a saint dipped in gasoline, like a demon painted in soft gold, like an angel with blood under its nails, like all the contradictions they tried to erase. Standing upright, breathing, choosing to exist anyway. That terrifies them. You know why? Because tonight, you showed them a version of yourself that rewrites the rules simply by standing still. A version built from every breakdown you survived alone. Every betrayal you learned to swallow without choking. Every night you stayed quiet because screaming would have killed the room. You stepped out wearing your history. Stitched into your posture, woven into your silence, glowing behind your eyes like a warning light. No wonder they froze. You didn't come to impress. You came to announce. Announce that you're no longer shrinking yourself to fit the frame. Announce that you're no longer dimming the fire to make others comfortable. Announce that you're no longer dressing like the version of you the world preferred. You came out wearing evolution, and evolution is never subtle. It's explosive, disruptive, unavoidable, uncomfortable. You stepped out wearing something they didn't expect. The truth. The truth of what surviving does to a person. The truth of what pain shapes someone into. The truth of what happens when a quiet soul finally remembers it was born with teeth. And now they're scrambling, trying to explain why their heart rate spiked when you walked by. trying to act like they didn't stop breathing for a moment, trying to pretend you didn't look like a prophecy dressed in fabric. But deep down, they know tonight. You didn't just get dressed, you declared war. War on the version of you that begged, war on the shadows that tried to claim you, war on the expectations that used to chain your shoulders down. And while the whole city froze, you just kept walking, unbothered, unapologetic, unreachable. Because you finally figured it out, the moment you stop dressing to be accepted and start dressing to reveal what they should fear. The city doesn't move, it obeys, so go on. Take another step, let them stare, let them whisper, let them sweat. You didn't drop a bomb tonight, you became one. Oh, you want more? Good, because the city hasn't recovered yet, and neither have you. See, that moment when you stepped out, that wasn't an outfit, that wasn't a look, that wasn't a vibe. That was a code execution, a psychological payload wrapped in fabric and confidence. You detonated something ancient, something forbidden, something they never expected you to carry. You know what I saw? Not cloth, not color, not texture. I saw the shift in your spine, the shift in your breathing, the shift in your quiet. From, I hope no one notices me, to I dare you to look away. You stepped into the street like you were resurfacing from another dimension, a place only the broken return from stronger. And the city felt it. They didn't see you. They experienced you. People don't freeze for fashion. They freeze for force. And that's what you carried tonight. An atmospheric pressure that bent reality just a little bit around your edges. Let me explain it. The way the scientists whisper about you. When someone evolves faster than their surroundings, the environment glitches. The simulation stutters. The code panics. It tries to recalibrate. And that's exactly what happened when you showed up. Traffic lights hesitated. Phones lagged. Even the wind forgot what direction it was supposed to blow. Why? Because your presence didn't match last week's data. You're different now. Dangerously different. Suddenly unpredictable, suddenly uncontainable, suddenly too loud without speaking a word. And people feel that. You think the stares were about style? No. They were scanning you like you were a breach in protocol, like something classified had escaped, like someone who wasn't supposed to survive. Survived anyway. You stepped out wearing survival disguised as elegance, trauma disguised as poise, raw weaponized self-respect disguised as a fit. And that kind of authenticity is radioactive. It melts the insecurity right off the people watching. Some froze because they wanted you. Some froze because they feared you. Some froze because they knew. In one horrifying, humbling instant, that you are the blueprint they'll never reach but the best ones, the most honest ones. They froze because they saw something they've never seen before. You, unedited, not the you that keeps peace, not the you that stays small, not the you that plays nice. No, they saw the you that crawled out of heartbreak, like a creature learning to breathe fire, the you that sharpened itself in silence, the you that learned to walk with wounds that should have crippled you, the you that doesn't ask for permission to shine anymore, and that you, the unveiled, unmasked, unrestrained version, walked out wearing clothes that finally matched the frequency of your soul. Clothes that didn't protect you, but revealed you, revealed the contradictions they never expect someone like you to hold. Grace and danger, softness and steel, heaven and hell, saint and psychopath. A halo with burn marks, a demon with calm eyes. People don't know what to do with duality. It breaks their wiring, it makes them panic. You embody too much, too many extremes, Too many layers, too many versions of a person they can't categorize. That's why they froze. You didn't just scare them. You overwhelmed them because tonight they realized something they never wanted to admit. You can't be predicted anymore. You can't be controlled anymore. You can't be dismissed anymore, and worst of all, you can't be ignored. You stepped out wearing freedom, and freedom is always threatening to those who live inside cages. You stepped out wearing self-respect, and self-respect is violent to people who feed on your doubt. You stepped out wearing evolution, and evolution always leaves casualties, so keep walking. Let the city glitch. Let their brains stutter. Let their hearts malfunction. Because tonight wasn't about what you wore. It was about what you became. And trust me, they'll remember this night. They'll remember the breath they lost, the silence that followed, the way their pulse spiked for no logical reason, the way their mind kept replaying the moment like they were trying to solve a crime scene. Because deep down, they know. No matter what you wear tomorrow, nothing will ever compare to the terror and beauty of tonight. When you stepped out looking like a prophecy in human form, a warning, a weapon, a revelation wrapped in skin. Continue walking, darling. Reality hasn't finished recalibrating yet. You're still here. Good. Because the world isn't done trembling from the way you stepped out tonight, and neither am I. Let me tell you what really happened. Not the filtered version they'll pretend to understand, but the raw, uncomfortable truth pulsing underneath it all. When you walked out wearing that, the city didn't just freeze. It submitted. Every building, every light, every wandering soul felt something ancient tug at their instincts. A quiet command, a shift in hierarchy. For the first time in a long time, the world remembered you aren't one of them. You walk among them, but you are not one of them, and that terrifies them to the bone. Because you didn't dress like someone trying to fit in. You dressed like someone who finally realized they were born outside the script. Tonight, your clothes weren't fabric. They were a revelation, a confession, a warning. Every thread whispered the same violent truth. I am no longer hiding. And the city heard it. Loud, sharp, electric people paused mid-stride, not because you looked good, but because you looked true. Dangerously, unapologetically true. You weren't dressed to impress. You were dressed to expose. Expose the part of you forged in sleepless nights. Expose the part of you sculpted by betrayal. Expose the part of you sharpened in silence while everyone else assumed you had nothing left. You walked out wearing victory disguised as aesthetic, healing disguised as swagger, dominance disguised as detail. It wasn't the outfit. It was the energy leaking out of you like radioactive light. An energy the city couldn't process. An energy that made every insecure soul in a mile radius rethink their entire life. You know what's funny? Half the people didn't even know why they stopped moving. Humans don't know how to articulate instinctive fear. They just freeze, stare, and pretend it's admiration. But it wasn't admiration. It was recognition. Recognition of someone who has suffered enough to glow differently. Someone who has broken enough to become unpredictable. Someone who has evolved enough to make the rest look unprepared. And tonight, you didn't walk. You announced. Announced your rebirth. Announced your return. Announced that you're no longer dressing like a casualty, but like a catalyst. Tell me. Did you feel the shift in the air? That static crawling across your skin like invisible fingers? That voltage in your heartbeat? That strange, eerie certainty that you weren't being seen? You were being studied. That's what happens when someone crosses the threshold between human and symbol. You stepped out wearing a symbol, not of status, not of trend, but of liberation through suffering. A symbol carved from everything that should have destroyed you but didn't. A symbol of a soul that refused to die quietly. People saw that, and deep down, it rattled them, because most of them are still wearing costumes, pretending, shrinking, performing. But you showed up wearing your truth, and truth is the most intimidating accessory a person can carry. Truth is disruptive. Truth is uncomfortable. Truth is a mirror, and most people are terrified of mirrors, especially ones that talk back. And when you walked by, every mirror in every person cracked just a little. They didn't see your outfit. They saw their own inadequacy, their own fear, their own stagnation. You didn't scare them because you looked good. You scared them because you looked free. Free from their judgment, free from their expectations, free from the versions of you they tried to confine. Tonight you dressed like someone who finally realized you cannot cage a creature born from fire. And here's the part they'll never admit. Some froze because they envied you. Some froze because they desired you. Some froze because they wanted to be you. But all froze because they understood one chilling fact. You are not the same as you were yesterday. And nothing is more terrifying than a person who evolves without waiting for permission. So keep walking. Let their jaws hang. Let their hearts race. Let their egos crack. Because tonight, you didn't just step outside. You stepped into your final form. And I promise you, the city will remember the exact temperature of the air when you did. It will remember the silence, the tension, the awe, the jealousy, the fear. It will remember the way time hesitated, as if reality itself wasn't sure it could survive the new version of you. So go on. Walk further. Walk slower. Walk like the streets were paved for your arc. Because tonight, they were. Everything froze for a reason. They weren't shocked by what you wore. They were shocked because, for the first time ever, you wore your power. Stay very, very still for a second. Not your body. Your mind. Freeze it. Rewind the tape. Back to that doorway. Back to that first step. Back to the instant before the city saw you. Do you remember what you felt? That tiny tremor in your chest? That whisper that said, "Are you sure?" That old ghost of doubt brushing its fingers against your throat, trying to tighten it. That was the last version of you dying. Because the moment your foot crossed that line, out of your room and into their world, something irreversible happened. Your fear got outvoted by your evolution. You felt it, that click, that shift. You weren't just walking. You were crossing a border, leaving behind the version of you that used to apologize simply for existing. That's the part nobody saw. They saw you at impact. They saw you after the transformation, wrapped in fabric and flame. But they didn't see the war you fought. Just to open the door, they didn't see the nights you were too broken to move. The mornings you stared at yourself, wondering if you'd ever come back. The years they wrote you off while you quietly rewired your entire operating system. They weren't there when you had to rebuild your sense of self from ashes. And now they're shocked you look like this. Of course they froze. They're not looking at an outfit. They're looking at a resurrection they didn't authorize. You stepped out wearing the kind of energy that only comes from surviving psychological car crashes and emotional snipers, and walking away with your spine taller than before. They saw the silhouette. You know the scars underneath. They saw the glow. You know the graveyards you walked through to earn it. They saw the confidence. You know how many nights you doubted you'd make it past tomorrow. And that is why they can't handle you. Because when a person who is supposed to stay broken decides to become beautifully dangerous instead, the whole system panics. You are living, breathing evidence that their limits are lies. That terrifies them. You remind them that you can lose everything and still come back colder, sharper, stronger. You remind them that you can be publicly underestimated and privately upgrading. You remind them that the quiet ones are often just loading. So when you stepped out tonight, you didn't just look good. You invalidated years of their quiet bets against you. You erased their private predictions. You shattered the script where you were supposed to stay beneath them forever. They've been comforted by the idea that you'd never fully tap into what you are. And then you did. You stepped out like a glitch that refused to be patched. Like a rumor that turned out to be a prophecy. Like a ghost that came back with receipts. Face it, you didn't dress like a citizen, you dressed like a verdict. And the verdict is this: you are no longer available for smallness. You are no longer dressing like someone who needs their approval. You are no longer participating in aesthetics that make your power palatable. From now on, everything you put on your body isn't just style. It's signal that you survived. Signal that you learned. Signal that you refuse to pretend you are less than what your scars have made you. Light and dark both answered the call when you stepped out. The light in you said, "This is who I really am." The dark in you said, "And if they have a problem, they can choke on it." Angel and demon both walked beside you. The angel kept you calm. The demon kept you untouchable. You didn't just walk through the city, you haunted it. And from now on, that's what you are to them. A walking reminder, a moving omen, a beautiful threat. They will remember the night you came out like this. They'll tell the story wrong, of course. They'll reduce it to, "Bro, did you see what they were wearing?" They'll laugh out loud and replay it in their heads. In silence, they'll say, "Who do they think they are?" But inside, the question burns differently. Who the hell am I that I can't walk like that? That's what you do to them. You don't just change the room. You change the ratio between who they are and who they could have been. You make them acutely aware of every moment they abandoned themselves. And that's why the city froze. For a split second, everyone watching had to confront the terrifying possibility that maybe, just maybe, you are what happens when someone refuses to abandon themselves. So here's what you're going to do. You're not going to tone it down. You're not going to mute it. You're not going to shrink back into the version of you that made others comfortable but killed you slowly. No, you're going to walk like this is permanent. Like this wasn't an accident. Like this wasn't a one-time shock. You're going to walk like you meant every inch of it. Because you did. You're going to keep stepping out in ways that scramble their nervous systems. You're going to keep showing up like someone who survived the fire and decided to wear the smoke as cologne. You're going to keep dressing like your soul is done, apologizing for its volume. You are no longer dressing to be liked. You are dressing to be remembered, and they will remember. The way your aura hit them like a silent explosion. The way their mind didn't have the vocabulary to process what it was seeing. The way time seemed to glitch as you passed. They'll move on with their day eventually. But some of them will never forget that one moment. The night the city froze. Because you stepped out wearing something far more dangerous than fabric. You stepped out wearing who you really are. So go ahead, close the door behind you. Not the physical one, the old one. The door to the version of you that begged, waited, shrank, and dressed to survive instead of to reign. Lock it. Burn the key. Bury the ashes. You're not going back. From this point on, understand something very clearly. You don't just enter rooms anymore. You drop bombs in them, and tonight was only the first blast.